Okay, hello everybody. I'm at Bethany's house, my daughter, my oldest daughter, and we're going to cover. Now, I asked her today, this is the Sunday that I usually do the notes or the outline from either whatever church I had visited or and the Catholic Mass. But today I actually went to the Catholic Mass. I wasn't sure if I was going to go to Church Unlimited. I'm rotating different churches, but I wound up going to the Mass today. And so those will be the verses that I'm going to discuss. But I asked Bethany when she just got home a little while ago, I asked her, she usually gives me the outline from Church Unlimited so I could just look at the verses. But I said, no, I want you to surprise me. That way we'll see if the verses that Bill preached on had something to do with what I'm going to discuss. Okay? Now let me start with yesterday. Yesterday was Saturday, and I usually try to catch the news at about 5:30. I'll get the world news, then I'll get the local news. And I have not commented a lot about the news, okay? But I'm still very active. We had a couple of police shootings that have caused some riots or protests now, like for the fourth or fifth day. I used to comment on a lot of them, but and I want to mention one was, it was interesting because those of you that watched all my videos, you see I get very upset on many of those police shootings. But I do want to defend one thing about the cops and one of the incidents that's causing protests. You had one where it was a lady cop, a white lady cop, and there was a man that was a black man. These came out on video this last week, both of these cases. There was a black man that his car was broken down. SUV was broken down, and the lady cop was on her way to another domestic violence incident. And on the way, she saw the black man, bigger black man, in the street next to his vehicle. So she didn't know what was going on. And then maybe there's some questions if the man was on PCP or drugs. But they immediately removed that woman and are going to seek to see. It's going to go before grand jury, and that only took like 2 days, and that particular city and all immediately moved on it. Basically, he had his hands up. He was going towards his car. She said he was not listening to instructions, which might have been true, but there were a few cops that were right there, and as he was going to his vehicle, she says she thought he might have been reaching into his vehicle for a weapon. Of course, there was no weapon in that case. Second, the window of the vehicle was rolled up. And it's possible he was not listening to instructions because he might have been high or whatever. So she shot him and killed him with one shot. In the past, 6-7 years ago, it would have been considered justified simply if an officer felt that they were in danger of their life, even if there was no danger. If they felt they were in danger. In the past, that's considered justified killing. Things are changing now, and they're looking at maybe that woman was upset, that lady cop, but either way, here come this morning I made a video. I'll let them come in, and this morning it was lightning and thunder.
It was good.
I'm not going to stop the video, but I'll tell them. I'm doing a teaching video right now, so I'm not going to stop. It's just me and Bethany. And but if you all want to sit, I didn't teach it yet, but I'm not going to stop. So anyway, I discussed one shooting, and then the other shooting. I want to defend the cop on this one in this sense. The other shooting that has caused protests, I don't want to go too long about this, but they went to a scene, and there was a black guy in a vehicle, and you could hear the recording. They released the dash cam recording, and they were telling the black man in the vehicle, the second one now, drop the gun, drop the gun, drop the gun. Now, you could hear, I believe it's his wife, on her phone saying he's a brain injury patient, okay? He's got brain damage and he's on medication, and she's yelling on her phone. This video was released first. She's saying he does not have a gun. He's a brain injury patient, and this is the second shooting this week. Well, as she's yelling that, you hear about 10 shots, they killed him. Now, the cops in that case claim he had a gun. The wife is saying, no, he had a book, something like that. Then the clips were released from the home video, and one clip showed no gun on the ground, okay? They did the still frame of the video. This came on MSNBC News. There's no gun on the ground. The next clip on the still frame, as they're taking the video, there's a gun. And you see an officer throw something to the ground. Now, it's possible that he threw a gun to the ground. You also see an officer with his foot on a gun. That caused a lot of people, even the news person, this came out on MSNBC News, even the news people were saying it looks like maybe that cop planted a gun. This is what I want to say in defense of the cop. If that man did indeed have a gun and they shot him, they believed he had one because they were yelling, drop the gun, drop the gun, drop the gun. What you do is if you shoot the victim and you think he had a gun, why would the cop's foot on that gun that he dropped? The cop dropped one. It's possible that if the man had one, you take the gun away from him. You don't know if he's dead. And you go up to him, and if he had one, you pick it up. And maybe the reason it was not seen on the first shot, and then you see it after he threw it, is because that's what you do. You get it away from the person. Now, on the news, it certainly looked like, oh, that cop planted one. But I would say it's possible that the man had one, the cop picked it up, and he threw it. And then the reason you see him with his foot on it is because that's an immediate thing that you do. You make sure if the victim is not dead, and you never know, he might get up and grab it. So video is important, and I don't defend the bad shootings, but I didn't get into those deeply because I used to. So I just want to say that. Now, when I was trying to watch the news yesterday, it's going to fit in with the verses I'm going to share, okay? I got 3 people now, my wife, my 2 daughters. But I wanted to start because I was ready to teach, and I won't go long. When I tried to watch the news yesterday, what got me mad was they had the football games on. And if you're a football fan, fine. And I went to all the stations, and of course everybody was excited about it. And you could hear them on the news, watching the games. Oh, there's just so much. And I wanted to see what was happening in the real world, okay? Because I'm involved with trying to find out about how things are going in the Syria conflict and so forth. And I was mad because this is what I thought in my head. And I probably said it out loud. My wife probably heard me. I said, I don't want to watch entertainment, That's okay if you're a football fan. I said, there are real things happening in the world. I say that when I'm at the house. And I'll say, what a waste of time is what I was saying. I said, what a disgrace that they have all the excitement over that. Something that means absolutely nothing when we're all dead in 30 years, 50 years. But other things are real important. So the thing that offended me was I couldn't catch what was actually going on in the world about real injustices taking place, which that's why I watched the news. Then the chapter from the Mass was Amos chapter 6. Okay? I was going to read it, but I won't. This is Amos chapter 6. Woe to you that are at ease in Zion. Okay, the prophet is saying, woe to you that are in comfort, in ivory palaces, sitting on beds, enjoying everything. And then it says, but you didn't look, you were not concerned with what was going on with the affliction of your brothers. Okay? You were not concerned, and you thought and you trusted in your strong country. You trusted in the fact that your country, this is Amos 6, that says the mountain of Samaria, but I can't teach exactly all of that right now. So the prophet is saying they were sitting back, they were enjoying leisure and entertainment, while at the gate there was injustice and affliction and oppression with others, but they isolated themselves. And that's exactly what I was thinking yesterday. The thing that offended me is not, I'm a boxing fan, I'm not a big football fan, but I've not watched boxing in years. It's a whole other story why it's no longer available to the public. But I was upset that as I watched everybody so excited on all the football games, I thought, I want to see if there's something happened today. That's what the prophet Amos was saying to the people in that chapter. And he said, you're not concerned with affliction that is taking place, oppression, injustice, and you're just enjoying your talked about wine and so forth, banqueting. So the prophet, that was the verse chapter from the Mass, Amos 6, and he's saying, if you think you're going to escape, what the prophet said to the people in that chapter was, go look at all the other nations. Go look at the great Gath of Philistine example. Go look at the other countries that used to be like you. Everything was going well. And now we're in absolute destruction. People are screaming in the streets, fleeing, refugees, kids dying today because they were comfortable at one time. Right now, today, this is taking place, and now they're fleeing. They're fleeing. In the world today, there's people running, dying, and being killed on a daily basis. And what the prophet said in that chapter was, what makes you think that that's not going to happen to you? Because your country, talking to Israel, your country is doing so good right now. You've isolated yourself from the plight of the nations. And who do you think you are that you're going to get away with that? Who do you think you are that you're going to continue to live in your leisure mentality because it's not reached your borders yet? And the prophet says to them, it's coming. And you think you're putting it far off, it's coming. And without getting too political, as I watch where we are at right now as a nation, and I see what's happening right now in North Korea, China, Russia, it's coming. The reason we as a nation, the United States, are so isolated because we have had the capability to fight wars and to have wars without the average public being involved in it. Okay? We have a tremendous army, tremendous military. And we as a country have had the capability to actually engage in war without that war touching us. That's why we have that capability to be watching football games and be real happy, and yet there are people dying. And some of the cases have to do with our involvement in the world. And what the prophet said to the people was, don't think it's not coming to you. That's exactly what he was saying in that chapter. Don't think it's not coming to you, because it's going to come to you. And I won't give all of the things happening right now today, but at this present time. But that was the judgment. It says you're unconcerned with what's happening in the gate, right at your doorstep. And he even says in that chapter, you think your borders are so secure, but judgment's coming to you. Now, the other chapter was Luke chapter 16, okay? I felt that was an indictment on everything that's going on today. And that chapter was not meant to be an indictment on the U.S., but it was, okay? It was read in the Mass. Now, the other chapter is Luke 16, which I taught on last week, which was the beginning of it. But here's a parable that Jesus told, and it's famous. It's called the rich man and Lazarus. Jesus said there was a certain rich man that fared sumptuously every day, just like the chapter of Amos. He had everything, okay? And there was a beggar at his gate by the name of Lazarus. And the beggar at the gate was in distress, and he was just wanting the crumbs that would fall from the rich man's table. And it says, the dogs came and licked his sores. Well, one day the beggar died. Now, Jesus is telling this. Some teachers say it's not a parable because a proper name is used in this parable. The proper name that's used is called Lazarus, okay? In the other parables, you don't have actual names used. But I still believe this is a parable, okay? Well, when the beggar died, it says he was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. It says, but when the rich man died, he lifted up his eyes in hell. Okay, now Jesus is showing us that throughout the life of the beggar or the oppressed was affliction, suffering, and difficulty throughout that man's entire life. But the rich man, he was like the people in Amos chapter 6. Not only did he have everything that he felt he needed, but he was unconcerned with what was happening in the gate. He was unconcerned what was happening at the border or happening to his brothers and sisters that were right there. Okay, the rich man in hell realizes that now he's in judgment. Now he's in torment. It says he lifted up his eyes and he saw that beggar, that guy that he never really paid attention to. He sees him, quote, in Abraham's bosom. Okay? Type of paradise or heaven. And then, as he's in that condition, the rich man says, I didn't know that I would give an account someday. I didn't know how bad this was going to be, that I'd give an account, that I lived unconcerned about the plight of the poor and the oppressed. But now I see that I have to give an account for that. I see that I live my life for entertainment, for money, for joy, and that was my purpose. Well, he says, I have other brothers. The rich man in hell says, I have other brothers. Can you send Lazarus now, who understands that he suffered in his life and now he's in a place of peace? Can you send him back from the dead to go warn my brothers that there's a judgment? Because my brothers were just like me. And in the parable, he says, they have Moses and the prophets. I got the thing from the Mass. Let's see if I get it on there. It says, if they will not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead. What he said was, in the parable, he said to that rich man, they have the Bible, they have Moses and the prophets, the Old Testament. Why don't they just read and listen to what the prophets have been saying? Amos is a prophet. Okay, I just taught it. And what the rich man said is, they don't really care about what the prophets are prophesying. They don't really care. They view the prophets and all of these words of God as, we don't have time for that. We have a lot of other things we're doing in our lives. But if somebody goes back from the dead, the rich man says, they'll listen to him. And now Jesus is telling the story, don't forget. And Jesus puts the words in the mouths of the characters, and Jesus says, if they don't listen to Moses and the prophets, if you don't listen to the warning when you get the warning, you're not going to even listen, even if one rose from the dead. And Jesus, I believe, is prophesying even of himself, because obviously he didn't die yet, was not crucified yet. And when he does, the whole debate Jesus had in the Gospels with the religious figures was they would come to him and say, you say this, Jesus, but Moses said this. They kept looking to the old, their adherence to Moses. And Jesus was saying, no, Moses spoke about me. Moses prophesied about me. But you're not willing to receive what Moses wrote because you're rejecting me. And now when Jesus does die, buried and raises from the dead, many of them still would not believe, just like he said in that parable. So the theme actually was, and this morning I taught on James, okay? The video you're going to get before this video, I wasn't going to teach today, but I woke up, you're going to see lightning on that other video, you're going to see rain pouring, but I told on James, and it was the same theme. James says, "Go to now, you rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that will come upon you. You have heaped treasure together for the last days." And all of that money and all of that stuff you've put together, it's going to be a witness against you. And you've oppressed the worker. You cheated him in his wages. This is James. That's James chapter 5. It says there's a judgment coming. So the whole theme was, to those of you that are comfortable in Zion, meaning you're in a leisurely position right now. And in that chapter of Amos, I really do see, when I read it earlier after the Mass, I read that chapter before I spoke, but I see the West or the United States so much in that picture. And I don't particularly think that the United States is particularly in prophecy. People debate it, Babylon and Revelation 18. But the whole scenario of those who say, we sit and we have a lot going for us. And the warning was, there have been other civilizations that had a lot going for them. Okay? And when they collapsed, nobody expected them to collapse as well. I think it was Alex de Tocqueville in the 1800s when he looked at the grand experiment of the U.S. But he said, it's interesting because we got a democracy and it was a wonderful thing that he was examining. But there was warnings given that the experiment of our country, which is very young, there's civilizations that are a lot older than us, but there will be a judgment coming. So that was Luke, and I won't, the one in Timothy is 1 Timothy 6. And that was the other verse for the Mass. I'll do it real quick. 1 Timothy 6 is, listen to those in authority, obey those in authority, but then it also says, Paul's writing Timothy, and he says, there will be some that will teach that financial gain is what godliness is all about. From such turn away. This is 1 Timothy 6. Don't listen to that preaching. It says, Paul wrote it. He says, Timothy, you came into the world with nothing. When you die, you cannot take it with you. Therefore, having food and clothing, the basic needs met, be content. But some desired to seek to become rich, and they have swerved from the faith, and they have pierced themselves through with many arrows, because they began to seek wealth. That was the chapter from Timothy. And Jesus himself said, you cannot serve God and money. You will either hate one and love the other, or you will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. That's the words of Jesus. I'll quote Jesus again. Beware of materialism, covetousness, for a person's life does not consist in the abundance of the things that he possesses. Okay? These warnings are all throughout the Bible, and I just taught them. Now, what was Church Unlimited's message today?
About money.
Oh, let's read. Let's see what
titled
that
The
was.
Lure of Money.
The Lure of Money.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And
So
try to break them, you know.
Oh, so it fit. Give me, read some of the verses.
This is Luke chapter 12, verse 15. This, then he said, beware, don't be greedy for what you don't have. Real life is not measured by how much we own.
That's what I just quoted. That's another version. Beware of covetousness. That's the one I quoted. Beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance. That's a different version.
That's the first verse that he had on here. Another one of Luke chapter 16, which you were talking about earlier, is, and if you are untrustworthy about worldly wealth, who will trust you with the true riches of heaven? And if you are not faithful with other people's money, why should you be trusted with money of your own?
Okay, now that was Luke 16, which I taught last week, but I also taught the parable from it today.
Do you want me to go through all of them, or just maybe a couple more?
Just read another one.
This is Ecclesiastes, chapter 5, verse 10. Those who love money will never have enough. How absurd to think that wealth brings true happiness.
Okay, read the next one.
Psalm 24, verse 1. Chapter 24, verse 1. The world and all that it is in belongs to the Lord. The earth and all who live on it are his.
Okay.
Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18.
I think I know that one. Read it.
But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms his covenant, which he swore to your forefathers as it is today.
Yes.
Acts chapter 4, verse 32. As all the believers were of one heart and mind, and they felt what they owned was not their own. They shared everything they had.
Good.
And Philippians chapter 4, verse 19. God will meet all your needs according to his glorious riches in Christ Jesus.
Okay. So all of those would fit in exactly what we were talking about. The one in Deuteronomy is famous. The Lord your God gives you the power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant in the earth. I've taught that. I can't do it all right now. But that was actually more of a promise to the nation, okay? To the people. Not so much that each one would become independently wealthy, but God would give enough provision for the work to be done. And then the one in Acts really is the communal idea of church and people sharing, helping, and caring for one another. So the Christian church, when judgment comes to the world systems, which is coming, but the Christians, their hope is in a greater calling, and they also take care of one another. That was one of the early witnesses of the church. They said that they were loving one another, caring for one another. So it's not in our independent borders, if you will. We have it all, but it's in the mindset of loving one another. The rich man, see, Lazarus was an example of a beggar who the reason he was not taken care of, it wasn't because there were not enough provisions. Because he was at the gate of a man who could have easily taken care of him and had more than enough to take care of him. But because the rich man, was not concerned with that. He had the mindset of, that's not my fault, that's not my problem. But he didn't know he was entrusted with that wealth in order for it to also have an effect on society, to have an impact. But he didn't see it in that manner. So we did 27 minutes. I think we're going to end. Does anybody want to say anything else? I think they all fit. Okay, we'll end with that. And Tina, do you want to say something?
Okay.
You want to promote your makeup thing on? Say something about it, because people watch the videos, and I have Becky talk about her issues all the time.
Well, let me prepare for it, and I'll say something next time, okay?
Okay. Mary, do you want to say something? Okay. All right,
Thanks,
let me end in the prayer then. Father, I thank you for letting us share all the scriptures and how even the verses from Church Unlimited were right along with the verses, and I felt I shouldn't have even looked at them ahead of time. That way you would just confirm it right on the video, which worked out well. So what we ask is that you bless the church, bless unity for all the body of Christ, and let everybody that watches the video, let them benefit in some way. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.